So this is a sketchbook. As you can see, over time I have collected little quotes that I felt were important throughout the project. Yep. But yeah, we'll get into it. So I started off the project by introducing it and explaining why I felt it was important to do it. I've got my why, what and how. Basically I chose to do the project because it's something, recycling and upcycling is something that I care a lot about. I, in my personal life, try to upcycle as much as I possibly can. I run a small business where I use secondhand materials. So it's an ethos that I has a great importance to me. What annoys me about creating art, especially for a university purpose, is I feel like a lot of it ends up in landfill, especially like testers and stuff that I do. So my kind of goal was to not buy anything new for this project, to only use secondhand materials, and not to create things that would end up in landfill, to create things that could be used in everyday life. And I decided to hold myself accountable for these things by creating a material log. Everything in here has been reused in some capacity. So the paper that I've used here and the paper that I've printed on throughout the project is all on recycled paper. Paper that I already owned as well, so it hasn't been bought for this project. This, my manifesto, was actually done on post-it notes and stuck onto some rubbish. It was just a piece of paper that came when I ordered these eco wallets, which is another feature that you will see a lot throughout the project. It was just a way that I could easily add reused paper to the sketchbook without having to puncture anything important. So yeah, things like this were given to me secondhand. You will see all of this in the material log. Yeah, here's a manifesto. There is a screen grab of it in my supporting document, so I won't go over it now. Here's what the material logs look like. Creating the material log was something I found to be extremely important because it's a way for me to hold myself accountable, and it means that if I have something, for example, my printer, I could research how sustainable that thing is. It turns out that my printer is actually one of the best recommended printers by HP for economic value, which is fantastic. No, not economic, environmental value, which is fantastic, and it was really good to know. But like you can see throughout all of the material logs that I've created that I've added in my own research. I looked into Posca pens and how and if they recycle, and lots of other stuff. The log speaks for itself, I think. Yeah, that's about the printers. Furniture Clinic was actually a really interesting thing that I researched, but we'll get into it later. After using this material log a few times, I did realise that I could streamline it and make it easier, because I found I had to write a lot of stuff that was kind of unnecessary. So this was the second version, and that was the version I used until the end of the project. Everything that I have used in this project, from fabrics and materials, whatever goes in here, whatever I've used at any point in time, it all goes in here. include even the search engine that I used to research things, EcoAsia, was in here. So yes, it was thorough. It was thorough, but it was helpful because I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the way that I create things. Here is me creating the workbook. So this was originally a Country Companion folder that I found, took the pages out of it, and then used misprinted. It was a handbook I tried to print, and it didn't print out well, so I cut it. Ripped it all up and stuck it on the front with some tape that I had spare lying around. But yeah, this is a mind map basically, and it's just putting my thoughts down on paper to explain where I think this project's going to go. I look at DIY culture and the environmental impacts of things, fast fashion, all that sort of stuff. These were where my thoughts were going at the time. You'll notice throughout my work that I embrace the kind of ugly, and that is a statement in itself. I have not made this to look pretty. A lot of it looks raw and unfinished, and that is kind of the point of it. Because my work may be ugly, but pollution is a far uglier alternative, and I like that look, and I think that it speaks for itself. Mood board. This was an essay on repair that I read that really inspired me throughout the project. I've annotated it, and but it just gave me a really good starting point and insight into the importance of repair and why we don't do it anymore. Basically, things aren't made to be repaired anymore. Things are made to be broken because companies make more money off of it. I then looked into Meryl Lerdman Ukels. I do apologise if I pronounce that wrong. And her maintenance work, maintenance art. I thought she was a really interesting person to look at, art, especially after looking at repair, because I wanted to look at acts of repair as art. So I researched her work a little bit, and then coming off of this, I then did a little bit of research into repair and why we don't do it anymore. Specifically looking at cobblers and how they are a dying company. They are a dying trade. This specifically looks at some very interesting facts. In America, in the 1930s, we had a significant amount of cobblers in the United States, and now it's severely dwindled. We went from having 100,000 in the 1930s to now only 5,000, and that was only in 2019, and I think it went on to go down to about 3,000 now currently. So it's just a statement on how we do not repair things anymore. I'm going to pick up speed a little bit so that I don't bore you. Then I looked into restoring things, because if maintenance can be a form of art, I think restoration can be as well. And this was a good reflection of my own life as well, because I restore things. That is kind of like a hobby of mine. I like restoring old furniture. I like restoring clothes. So it was a good reflection on myself. Basically, I bought a chest of drawers to match the desk that I'm currently working on at the moment, to go in my new studio. So I stripped down the chest of drawers by sanding it, and then stained it with multiple different colours to try and match this wood as well as I can, to show that you can still have an aesthetic and have a piece of furniture that looks good without turning to IKEA, which is a company that has damaged a lot of woodland. Again, looking into IKEA. And then this was my research into the sustainability of the company that I used and ordered from for my stain and my finish. really good company, really good sustainability values. And I then started upgrading this Chesterfield armchair, restoring it, sorry. There was some breaks in the leather, so I patched that and restored it, again using Furniture Clinic methods. I felt like maintenance work was just taking me too far away from the goal of the project, so I just kind of put that on the back burner for a little while, and then started looking at kintsugi, which is beautiful decorative restoration, which has been done for years. So I had a look into that, and then I did a little bit of a reflection of that, and took a photo of the cracked leather from the armchair and painted onto it in gold to just see what it would look like. I hate the experiment, but it was a fun experiment, and it led to something cool because the designs in the leather reminded me of spiderwebs, and that's where I went next. And I collected spiderwebs. I, in my personal time, collect spiderwebs anyway. I have a small business where I sell spiderwebs, so this is something that I do on a semi-regular basis, and I thought it would be really interesting to try and bring it into this project. Spiders are animals that, specifically orb weaver spiders, which are the ones that create these really stunning webs, they reuse their webs. They eat it and then rebuild their webs on a daily basis, which is kind of cool because, you know, they're reusing, they're upcycling, and that's fantastic. These are all abandoned webs. No spiders were harmed in the collecting of them. I've been doing this for years. I know how to do it without harming anything. If a web is abandoned, it is because a spider is not returning to it. Spiders live in their webs. That is how they are. They're quite sedentary creatures. They will live there and they will stay there. They don't go and hunt. That is their home. So I only collect abandoned webs, but I did them in gold this time, as inspired by kintsugi. Despite having done this for many years, it did go wrong. These are evidence of that. I used too much hairspray in this one. This one is an example of an unglossed web. I don't know whether you can see it on the camera actually, but and this one is an example of a glossed web, which it does look a lot crisper. However, the gold just does not stand out against the black background, unfortunately. So I did abandon this project, this part of the project anyway. I then moved on to looking at shells. I had this clamshell, which I'd been given, which was found in a back garden somewhere. And I decided to paint on this kind of like, I don't know what to call it. It's kind of like barnacles, but like worm-like barnacles. But like, yeah, I decided to paint on it in gold as, again, like replicating the kind of like decorative restoration and highlighting the imperfections. As you can see, you can't really see the difference between the two photos, so I abandoned it as well. Here's my evaluation. Then I looked at Sashiko. Sashiko is the practice of sewing into garments to reinforce and make it warmer. Traditionally it's done in white on this kind of blue material. And then it's into Sashiko Gals, which are a collective that use Sashiko to try and fund their community. They're a group of elderly women, and they create these really cool things, and they've paired with a few companies to make sustainable work, which is fantastic. I then drew some Sashiko sewing patterns because they're stunning, and I wanted to try and replicate them in some way. I then looked into the damaging effects of fast fashion. This was a really good article. I've known about the damaging effects of fast fashion for a really long time, but it was good to actually do some solid research on it. This is an article of a student finding a scorpion in their Shein parcel. This was not an isolated event. This happened multiple times. Just again emphasizing the damage that we are creating, and the lack of care that goes into the creations and selling of these products. I then looked into punk fashion. I was inspired by punk fashion because it has that kind of raw edge and DIY value to it, and the kind of ethos behind punk was political, and I felt like that was well reflected in this project. Again, looking into punk. This was me looking into Vivienne Westwood, which, as we know, was a very famous designer during the punk era. So I looked at Sex specifically because that was her shop with Malcolm McLaren. These are scans from the punk book, which I've listed in my bibliography, and also excerpts from websites and articles to try and get like a full kind of like view of what her work is. This one was a piece that looked into the negatives behind Vivienne Westwood's work, and I thought that was interesting. It was always important to look at both sides and what she creates now. I then looked into an artist called Moose. They have a company called Exo Umbra. It's a one-person run company. They make sustainable fashion by using upcycled materials, and the way they do it is really fascinating. They make these really cool pieces. They make art dolls and clothing, which they sell on their website for actually a quite reasonable price. I've been following them for a really long time now, so I was really lucky that I was able to actually talk to this creator. This is my email correspondence. I'm just asking them about how they remain sustainable in their processes. I then looked into, I did a comparison between the ethicality behind Vivienne Westwood's work versus Exo Umbra's work, and how basically my conclusion was, I think that Exo Umbra creates in a way that Vivienne Westwood would massively benefit, well, Vivienne Westwood's brand would massively benefit from. They're size inclusive, it's all handmade by one person, it's not sent to third parties for their products to be made. They use sustainable materials rather than with Westwood when they have 100% polyester. There's a lot more, but I'm not gonna get into it. Decorative repair. I spoke about this in my supporting document, so I won't get into that. But that was the canvases that I made. I then looked at animals that recycle. As you can see, we've got dung beetles, magpies, vultures, lobsters, hermit crabs, orb weavers, which I've already touched on. So I then did some work on hermit crabs because I found them to be one of the most interesting ones. These drawings were inspired by hermit crabs and their use of shells, and their use of rubbish as well. There's a really fascinating video that I've linked in my bibliography that shows hermit crabs using tin cans as shells where they don't have shells to use because tourists have used them when taking them from the beach. These are some observational drawings that I did in Whitby Lobster Hatchery. It was a really interesting visit. I find these kind of like style of one-line drawings to be really helpful for me to do because when I struggle with creativity, I find it loosens me up quite nicely. This is another piece that I did, which is in my portfolio, so I won't get into that now. Another use of like one-line drawings is Posca on recycled paper, and then I've used this black card. These black cards are used for my business cards, and then I have like all these little cut-offs, so I decided to make use of them. I then used a baby doll head and put it in an enclosure. Me and my partner, we keep spiders as pets. So we decided to put this in the enclosure with the spider to just see what they do with it and how they would use it. And I filmed a time lapse over about 2.5 days of the spider webbing up this to use it as a home. It was a really cool experiment, but the time lapse didn't turn out too great. Here's some examples of my notes that I've taken from one-to-ones. This one was just my notes, and then this is an example of my notes I've taken, and this is an example of how I have expanded on my notes. So I've looked into the artists that I've been given, and spoken about what influences I can take from it. We've got some really cool recommendations here that I looked at. Lee Bowery specifically, I was very interested in. And then these are my work. This is one of the workshops that I attended, where I made this kind of piece here, which was a kind of like weird little creature that would like live under a bed, and it inspired me to create this, which was this kind of shell that had like a doll's hand and some eyes coming out of it, again from the baby doll I showed before, which came from secondhand materials. This was visiting the Give Away Your Relics exhibition, and the screenshots from the Zoom that we had with the artist was a fantastic experience. Here's a piece that I kind of made accidentally. I was making collages in response to Give Away Your Relics, and I made this kind of piece accidentally. I was just trying to cut out the arms, but I found it to be quite significant because the arms actually end up taking out these kind of ice caps, which is very significant, and I've haphazardly stuck on a plaster there. I find it to be a very good example of how our intentions don't always match up with our impact on the environment. These are my collages. Again, they're in my portfolio, so I won't bore you with that now. These are building up the drawings that eventually went into screen prints. I've spoken about the significance in my document, so we'll just skip through these quickly. The process of screen printing, I did screen printing quite a few times. This one specifically was onto paper, and then I used a different type of screen to print onto fabric as well. This was an inverted image. I had to use an inverted image in order to create these screen prints. These are just screen prints from my testers. I did it onto black paper, again, it's secondhand, so yeah, these were my testers to make sure that it worked, and then I used some ink that was just lying around that was going to go in the bin, so yeah, and I really like this one. I then printed onto the pages from the Country Companion that I had. Because this design is supposed to represent the kind of like slow moving government that we have that's responding to environmental issues and the short-sightedness of it, I thought it would be very poignant to put it over landscapes. This was paper that I used in another workshop that I decided to reuse. Again, we can see the image on landscapes. Just experimenting with different colours, boldness, again on a landscape, but this one's from magazine. These were really fun to do. These were printing onto magazine advertisements, which is really important because fashion is one of the top leading industries that leads to pollution, and it's a massive problem for us right now, and we're not doing much about it. These were, when you use screen print, you have to use like parchment paper to like test, so I just added in my little testers as well. These were screen printing on spiderwebs. Preserved spiderwebs. These ones I did in white because the gold didn't stand out very well before. I've spoken about these before, so I won't get into them too much, but I think they are really cool and probably one of my favourite pieces that I've made. I then did some work on fabric. I used had an old bed sheet which I had. It was all pilling, so I decided to cut it up and use it for patches. These are my kind of like, yeah, they're not well printed. Yeah, it gave a mixed bag. I had to learn a lot, so these were my kind of like first prints. I learned that it was easier to put a backing behind it and make sure that I had the kind of like fan element on, so that it was holding the fabric down. See here, it's really crisp, and here it folded underneath where the fan wasn't on properly and it got stuck to the screen. Yeah, it was a process of learning. I got there eventually. It did take a while. So those are those. I've got some examples here. I won't go through all of them, but there's quite a few. These have been heat treated as well. Yeah, I heat treated them using a heat press so that they can be washed, and added to clothing. I thought it would be a good idea to hand these out to make my artwork accessible to people. I never actually got around to doing it though, but I guess I've still got them so I can use them if I need to. But that was part of my plan. Again, here are some examples of the printing on bed sheets. These snail ones turned out fantastic. I'm really, really happy with the way they turned out. Again, these have been heat treated. Yeah. I then decided to print onto a kind of jersey material. So this is a t-shirt that I cut out. Yeah. It was a ripped t-shirt, so I decided to reuse it. This is not one of the best prints. I've got better examples of those prints. Oh. Here, you can see the difference. Again, it was a learning curve because this curls up and it's a different kind of material. I did have to learn how to use it better, so by the time I got to here, we'd done a better job. Again, these are the same kind of like deal. It took a while, but we got there. So these are quite crisp, which is lovely. I then tried doing it on a different material, and that was denim. Well, not denim, these are stretchy, but they're a pair of jeans that had ripped, so I decided to use them. One of these designs actually ended up going on a bag. This one I really like because I kind of like that it's a bit faded. I think it looks really cool. Yeah, so that's them. And then there's the, I then went on to sew them onto fabrics and printing them onto different articles of clothing, which is shown in my supporting document and in my portfolio. So thank you for coming through my sketchbook with me.